promoting mindful well-being in everyday life. This is the Pragmatic Alchemy Podcast with your host, Courtney Edwards.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Pragmatic Alchemy Podcast. My name is Courtney Edwards, and I will be your host today. We are joined today on the podcast by Melanie Ryan, a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist, a Buddhist and shamanic teacher, an international retreat leader, author, and entrepreneur. I was very gratified and grateful to be able to get a preview of her latest book, The Golden Shadow Method. And Melanie's work focuses on spirituality and spiritual practice. And so that's going to be the essence of our conversation today, is looking at all of the ways that a spiritual practice helps promote mindful well-being in everyday life. So Melanie, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the work that you do?
Well, hello, and thank you, Courtney, for having me here. It's really such a pleasure to be here and want to say hello to your audience. I am a licensed clinical social worker, as you mentioned, for about 25 years or a little bit more. And I found spirituality about 20 years ago. And I'm really happy to be talking about this topic because it's very near and dear to my heart. And as a traditional psychotherapist, I didn't always plan to become a spiritual person. I didn't think about that. It wasn't really something, a goal of mine or anything. And so in the last few years, with everything happening on our planet, so much has happened that has helped us to go within and really find those spiritual places. And I thought that maybe we should first kind of define what spiritual is, right? So
Yes.
that can mean something different to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, spiritual is spirit ritual, right? Like, what is spirit and what is ritual? Because we put those two words together and it becomes spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, spirit is our essence, our energy inside of us, our soul. And as a psychotherapist, when I studied in Greece, and one of my mentors, who's really a scholar, psychotherapist in healing trauma, he really taught me about the Greek word psyche, which is the origin of psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And in Greek, the word psyche means spirit or soul.
Yes.
Right. And so psychotherapy is actually meant to be the caretaking, the therapy of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
So I practice for myself, and my work with other people is really about healing the soul. And that, whatever helps us to do that, to me, is spiritual. And that can be very simple things like going for a walk in nature, something that helps us connect to this oneness of our universe, right? That we're part of something greater than just being a mind and a body. There's something inside of us. There's this energy that can bring about great things like creativity and powers of healing. And in the Golden Shadow Method, I teach really three basic, well, not basic, but three, I kind of try and keep it basic, but it can get very deep. But three pillars, which is Jungian psychology, which Dr. Carl Jung was a psychoanalyst who, was partnered with Freud, studied the unconscious as a spiritual place. Jung was really one of the most spiritual psychotherapists.
I teach counseling theories, and I always start the Jungian section by saying I have a little bit of a psychology crush on him.
Yeah.
I think he's amazing. I think his work is amazing. It just seemed really progressive for the time in a lot of ways. And I love where we see the threads of analytical psychology in current practices. I think so much of that Freudian, Jungian, Adlerian theory is kind of considered like outdated. And then you look at it and you're like, well, no, but here it is in contemporary practice, even just the Myers-Briggs, right? Which most people don't connect with Carl Jung's work. But yeah, I love him. Love him.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he greatly influenced the Myers-Briggs
Hmm.
personality test, and that's really can give you a lot of great information about who you are.
Hmm.
So to me, spiritual practice in everyday life is what brings us back to our essence, what brings us back to our spirit, our soul, whatever it is that the Creator wanted us to be. I believe that the Creator gave us each really amazing gifts of creativity, and whatever that means. It doesn't mean you have to be an artist, that you have to be, good at art. A lot of my students have what they call art scars, right? Where it was like, they shut down their inner artist because when they were young, they were told, oh, you have to do it like this, or you can't do that. You can't color the elephant purple, or
Right, right,
color
right.
in the
That's so
line.
true.
You have to color in the lines, and art is such a spiritual practice for some people,
Hmm.
because what are we doing when we're doing art? We are really having that creative energy flow through us.
Yeah, yeah.
Jung did that a lot. Jung really emphasized art and working with symbols and mandalas, which crosses over into Buddhism.
Hmm.
So through Jung, I really discovered that I was really repressing a spiritual practice of mine, which is photography. I love taking pictures of flowers.
Okay. Yeah,
And
yeah.
to me, flowers, we all start off as a seed, right? We're like a flower. It's a perfect metaphor of who we are. We all are a seed. And if we are in the right environment, right? If we're planted in good soil and we're nourished, and mind, body, heart, and soul nourishment, then we will reach our full potential. And so will a flower. A flower will bloom,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So that has actually become my personal logo for my work, for the Golden Triangle
Yes.
Method.
And sunflowers in particular, which are my absolute favorite.
I do.
Yes,
I
they're the
love them.
happiest flowers.
They really are. And, we're under another way that I'm just kind of bringing in the sun, because we're under a solar eclipse right now, right?
Yes.
And so the sun is a very masculine energy, and it's about manifesting, right?
Mhm.
So we're meant to really manifest our dreams and these gifts that the Creator gave to us. And so what happens is we get distracted, we get lost, and we forget or we disown these amazing parts of our spirit and our soul. And so to me, a spiritual practice is what brings us back to who we really are, to
Mhm.
these gifts and this amazing creativity and intuition and love, that we have within us. So a spiritual practice can be very simple, to very elaborate. I know people who are up 5 o'clock in the morning chanting and meditating and doing yoga, and it's like their whole day seems to be a spiritual practice. And those are usually teachers who are making their whole life about spiritual practices from morning to night.
Mhm.
But for everyday person, a spiritual practice can be like at a busy day at work, that you just go outside and take a few deep breaths,
Mhm.
maybe look at the trees, and just find your calm,
Mhm.
find that sense of being grounded and connecting to yourself again. Because
Mhm.
especially in today's modern society, it's very busy. And my Buddhist background really taught me, to undo that, to undo this need, I was conditioned to be busy all the time,
Mhm.
and it was like if you were relaxing, it was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I that's a point I contend with clients so frequently, because rest has become equated with laziness in our society and not restoration, which I think is
Exactly.
such a harmful uh, way of approaching it.
Yeah, and that creates severe imbalance,
Hmm.
right? We're not
Hmm.
balanced in our masculine and feminine energies.
Hmm.
And I don't mean masculine and feminine as far as gender, but just energies that are out there,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like the yin and the yang, there's masculine and feminine, there's these opposites.
That's right.
And so masculine is the doing and feminine is the receiving. And, I love when people, say, we're human beings,
Mhm.
we're supposed to learn to just be.
Mm. Mhm.
And in
It's so hard.
meditation, it is really hard. So, so hard. It's all about learning to let go and let go of fear.
Mhm.
What's really driving us to go, go, go all the time, right? It's
Right.
it's some kind of fear. And in my lineage in Buddhism, I trained under Tibetan Buddhism,
Mhm.
the lineage of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And, just sitting and meditating and breathing. In my lineage, we practice shamatha, which is eyes open, because we're
Okay.
really learning to be here. We're not closing anything off. And to sit with your eyes open, with your gaze down, and allowing all the tension to go out on the exhale, right? And
Mhm.
oh my God, there would be all this energy, all this, phonetic kind of energy that I would feel that would make me want to leave my cushion, and learning to breathe through that, because what we're experiencing is that phonetic kind of energy builds because we never stop,
Mhm.
right? And so we're going like a train going 100 miles an hour.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that train doesn't just stop. It has to kind of slow down and
Right.
settle,
Right.
settle down. So in shamatha, we settle our mind and we let all that energy go out on the exhale. So like if you're having a busy day, to sit for 1 minute
Mhm.
and just
Yeah. I
that's
love that deep breath so much. Yeah.
yeah. And I really like to get people out in nature because of my shamanic background. Now, shamanism goes back, it's the oldest healing practice known to our planet. It's the indigenous men and women, the medicine men and women that were very connected to the earth. They are the earth protectors. They're the ones out, protecting the water and, fighting for the environment and things like that.
Mhm.
So getting out in nature and getting away from all of the distractions and just letting everything settle down, we actually come into our what is called our spirit mind.
Mhm.
So our left brain is, right, like the analytical problem solver, the one that wants to go, go, go. And the right brain is really more of the spirit mind, where again, it's the art, it's the creativity, it's the connecting to all things, that sense of, feeling things, our intuition, our instincts, all come from our spirit mind. So we can connect to that, by going outside and just sitting and meditating for a little while, or some people prefer walking meditation.
Mhm.
But I'd say, you know what, just go out and sit outside, get some sun. We are earth. The shamans would say, we're not separate from earth. We are earth. Our body is earth. And we're like a plant. Like we need sun, right? We need a certain amount of sun. We need good, clean water and good, clean air. We need good soil, good food, good fertilizer, right?
Mhm.
And these are the things, like the basic things that I teach as part of shamanism, is that your body is sacred.
Mhm.
And so a daily spiritual practice for some people would be, preparing food in a very loving way in their home, with maybe growing their own food is
Right.
a spirit. Like for me, that's a spiritual practice as well. I grow a lot of food and I grow flowers and then I take pictures of them. And it all starts to weave, together, and it becomes very creative.
Right.
So,
Oh, I
yeah.
love all of that. I love all of that. I do have one question that I wanted to ask. So a couple of weeks ago, I had published an episode from another psychotherapist who works in spirituality, and my husband listened to it and then texted me immediately after and said, I don't even know if I'm spiritual.
Hmm.
Speak to my husband or to any of the folks that because it comes up for me when I do coaching. I always ask during the intake process about folks' spiritual practice, and very often sometimes folks have really beautiful practices that they engage with regularly, and then sometimes I get the quick answer of, well, I'm not religious. And so trying to parse out the difference between religion and spirituality, or they'll say, I don't really have anything. I don't consider myself a spiritual person. Um, I believe, and I'm going to make the leap that you also believe that we just might not be in touch with it. So what do you say to folks who deny their spirituality or aren't in touch with it or don't know how to approach it or equate it with organized religion and feel like that's not a good fit for them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, I wasn't always spiritual, like I said earlier,
Mhm.
right? And I grew up, my mother was Jewish, my father was Catholic. And I was exposed to a lot of different cultures and a lot of different religions. And I get a lot of people that I work with, from all different cultures and religious beliefs. And so, to me, whether it's religious or whether it's spiritual, again, it's about what connects us to something greater than ourselves. And for some people, what I believe is going on our planet is we have an extreme amount of what's called soul loss.
Mhm.
And because I worked, my mentor, who I spoke about, I went to Greece with, he's a leading person in the area of healing PTSD and combat war veterans.
Mm.
And, we don't really realize how much war has impacted us as a collective.
Mhm.
We all are descendants of war because, first of all, our country was founded on war.
Mhm.
And we've been at war for thousands of years, honestly.
Mhm.
So, what happens when all of this trauma is around in our collective and is unhealed, we have what the shamans call soul loss, which is when the soul actually leaves the body, as a way of protection, right? We need that to happen. So in combat war veterans, when they're doing things that they have to do because it's their job, they actually report leaving their body and watching them do what they have to do. Sometimes it's killing people, right? And they're watching themselves from above.
Mhm.
And there's lots of reports on what it's like for them to experience their soul leaving their body. So I years ago I actually started to ask, this was before I met this mentor, I started to ask some of my clients to just close their eyes and let me know where their soul is, where their essence, whatever word you want to put on it. Soul is the one that we use the most.
Mhm. Mhm.
But did they feel like their soul was next to them, inside of them, across the room, not even in the room? And
Mhm.
believe it or not, a lot of people felt that their soul wasn't even in the room.
Right. Right. Wow, it's really
So,
powerful.
yeah, really powerful and also really concerning
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
we are that disembodied.
Right. Right.
You know?
Wow.
And so we have to bring the soul back. And I do a lot of work around soul retrieval.
Mhm.
I help people to retrieve these lost parts of them that leave because of the trauma. We have so much trauma. And, I've been talking to my colleagues and, my friends about, well, how do we really define trauma, And it's really anything that could make the soul leave the body, anything that
That's
makes
right.
you feel unsafe. It could be someone slamming a door,
Mhm.
or it could be watching the news over and over and you're traumatized by that.
For sure, for sure. The other
Yeah.
thing I talk about a lot with folks is you might be familiar with the ACEs research from Dr. Nadine Burke Harris and these adverse childhood experiences. And it's really shifted for me the way that I conceptualize of trauma and the way I approach it with my clients and just with people walking through the world with me. That it's so insidious and pervasive, and we generally think about big catastrophic events as traumatic and not, as you're saying, these smaller, quieter, more personal experiences that leave us feeling disconnected from ourselves and unsafe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's
So
important to
that's
acknowledge that.
exactly. I do
Mhm.
too. I agree 100%.
Mhm.
So my work really is about bringing the soul back into psychotherapy, and that is through spiritual practices, because spirit, we are soul, we are energy. Everything boils down to energy, right? And so spiritual practices are to bring us back home.
Mhm.
to help the soul feel safe to come back into the body so that we can be whole. All of the work, Jungian analytical psychology is about the path of individuation and
Mhm.
integration, right? We need to integrate, and also in shamanism as well. And I remember in my own healing work, I used to say I had a lot of mentors. I surrounded myself with so many people and spent tens of thousands of dollars on what I would say putting Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Mm.
And I would say that, I would say, this is like 15, 20 years ago. I was like, God, I feel like I'm Humpty Dumpty and you're putting me back together. And they would be like,
Right.
exactly, that's what we are doing. Because we don't realize how fragmented we are. And we're
Yeah.
running around so busy. When we stop and we sit in silence, we can start to feel all of that bubble up. And
Mhm.
that can be very scary for some people. And that's why they don't, do it.
That's why they wiggle out of shavasana and and don't
Yeah.
wanna meditate.
But the universe knows how to align itself and help us, and so yoga and mindfulness and now shamanism is actually going to become very big in the next 5 to 10 years. It's all to help us realign again
Mhm.
and self-correct. And it's through chaos right now.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
we
yeah.
know, right? As a therapist and other people know that chaos is an opportunity to heal and to realign, and it's reorganizing, right?
Right, right, right.
Everything has to fall apart in order to come back together.
Yeah, yeah. So what is tell me about the rise of shamanism in the next 5 to 10 years. What do you see happening?
Well, it's already happening. It's
Mhm.
it's really because we need to reconnect with nature.
Mm.
So, and it was actually for me too. I found mindfulness and Buddhism first, and then shamanism came very quickly after. And
Mhm.
they go so well together in coming home to who we are as nature, right? Like, as
Mhm.
I was saying. So, because we are what I call being denatured right now,
Mhm.
we are under this, sort of time of denaturing, where our food is no longer whole food, right? We have a
Mhm.
lot of processed foods, fake foods, chemical foods, pesticide foods. And so the food is being denatured, and also we are being removed from nature. And look at where we are, right? We're inside, we're online. I mean, it's really hard. It's very addictive, these devices that we have. I know I struggle sometimes with, oh my God, I just got to turn this off. And then, you feel that craving to go check,
Mhm.
you know, let
Right,
me
right,
just check
right.
my email. And
Make sure
like,
you're not
how
missing
many
anything.
yeah. So
Mhm.
shamanism actually brings us out of the house into nature, and eating, things that honor the sacredness of our body. Because I think spirituality, and I want to say this, spirituality also connects us to what's sacred. And shamans, when I was in Guatemala and I was there studying with Mayan elders and doing fire ceremony for days, they would come out, they wouldn't speak to another human being. They would go right to the lake and say good morning to the lake and connect to the lake, and then they would go and start building the fire. They connected to the elements, putting your hand on the earth, so this is what we need to come back into balance.
Mm,
Right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so we see like my enrollment, for my shamanic classes always sells out. I'm doing Shaman in the Shadow right now online, and all of I do a monthly full moon healing journey where we
Mhm.
practice shamanic journeying, which is a kind of meditation, visualization, and active imagination, as Carl Jung would call it.
Mhm.
And so we start to connect, to our spiritual guides, which are like animals and different archetypes, right? It's like archetypal. Yeah, very archetypal.
Yes, yes, which is the stuff that I love.
Yeah, it's so fun. People love shamanic journeying and it's so
Yeah.
transformative.
Hmm.
It blows me away, honestly, and it was what helped me
Hmm.
greatly
Hmm.
to learn how to tap into my own inner wisdom and what my inner archetypes were telling me.
Hmm.
Because these are primordial energies that are flowing through us, right?
Right.
And they
Yeah.
each have a medicine, as they call it in shamanism, like butterfly medicine is about transformation, right? Like, what does the butterfly symbolize? Change and transformation, right?
Hmm.
So it gives us these messages in these very deep, relaxed, meditative states. And everyone can journey in one way or another. I know some people who journey, when they're walking in nature or meditating. Sometimes they'll get like what I call like a download. They have
Hmm.
like an epiphany of some kind of clarity where all of a sudden, click, click, click. Oh my gosh, I know the answer now.
Oh,
You
it's
know,
so true. That's so true. I love that. Melanie, can we take a really quick break? And then when we come back, will you talk to us about your book a little bit?
absolutely.
All right, we'll be right back. And we're back. Today, we are talking to Melanie Ryan, licensed clinical social worker, Buddhist and shamanic teacher, global retreat leader, and author of The Golden Shadow Method. And so I'd like to pick up where we just left off, which is a little bit about the book. I've been reading it. It's fascinating and informative and delightful. But why don't you tell listeners a little bit about the contents and maybe a little bit just about what led you to writing this all down and what that process was like for you?
Sure. Great. Yeah. So part of this book has been coming to me probably for about 7 years, maybe more now, actually, probably 8 or 9 years. And little bits and pieces came to me while I was meditating, while I was on Buddhist retreats for, a week long in silence. And as I was saying before, when we sit in silence, sometimes we get these downloads.
Mhm.
So I would say the book really was a bunch of downloads and a lot of synchronicity. Things like if I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, I would go down and sit on my couch and I would meditate. And because I do eyes open, I would just be kind of looking around sometimes, and my attention would be drawn to a certain book on the bookshelf.
Mhm.
And I would open the book and it would open to a certain chapter, and it would be something, a topic that was very resonant for what I was going through at the time, or what I was teaching at the time, or what I was asking, the universe to give to me. And the book literally flew together in that way. A ton of, just silent time and asking what needs to be in this book.
Mhm.
So I knew that the book was going to have Buddhism and shamanism, but then during 2019, I got some visions from Carl Jung. I actually had a dream of Carl Jung. And
That's so meta, by the way. Right? Like dream analysis master Carl Jung coming to you in your dream. That's fantastic.
exactly, exactly. And so at that time, I had been going to Greece. I had been doing a lot of Jungian type depth psychology and archetypal work. And um, I had owned a very large holistic health center for 8 years. And I started also getting visions of myself not there anymore and
Mm.
teaching outside, teaching on farms, being in nature more, doing, you know, things at other places, and it didn't make sense to me. And so the end of 2019, I actually ended up contacting the landlord, the owner of the building, and saying that, I wanted to close. I needed
That's
to close.
serendipitous timing.
Yeah, and we
Mhm.
actually closed at right before the lockdown. I had asked for
Wow.
March 30th, and we locked down here in New York in St. Patty's Day, March 2nd.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So it
Wow.
was it blew my mind. because, a lot of us don't necessarily always listen to our intuition. I still don't
Yeah, I was
sometimes.
gonna say guilty.
Kick myself, I'm like, I should know better by now. So when we locked down, I had a ton of time and creative energy that I had been spending on, the center. And now all of a sudden, all I could hear in my head was about this book.
Mhm.
And then Carl Jung kind of popped into my meditation and my thoughts, well, if you're going to write a book about the shadow, you better include me.
Yes,
So
yes.
I knew I was going to be teaching on Buddhism and Shamanism, which are my spiritual practices for 20
Mhm.
years. And so I brought in Jung, and I had met a teacher who had spoken about the golden shadow.
Mhm.
And when I heard that word, I felt like I got hit by lightning.
Mm. Mhm.
And I was like, oh my God, yes, this is what I'm saying. This is what I've been saying. This is what has
Right.
been brought out of me in my spiritual practice, in my healing journey, is all of these amazing gifts that I never knew I had. So
Mhm.
I started writing. I hired a book coach, and her thing was to write a book in 3 months. And so I actually finished it in 6 months
Okay.
and launched it on the winter solstice of 2020.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And if you look at the cover of my book, though, it's actually the solar eclipse,
Right, right,
what we're
right.
under right now as I'm
Yes.
talking to you, which
Yes.
is about
Yes.
manifesting, right?
Yeah.
Manifesting our dreams. And there are over 35 exercises in the book for people who want to try and do this work on their own. And,
Mhm.
because we're in this modern time where we are fragmented as a society and we are home alone and we're not, necessarily able to take classes or come together in community. So I wanted to empower people to have these exercises. A
Mhm.
lot of them I do different ones in the online program. Some are in the book, and a lot are in the online program because I really mentor people who join the programs online with me. We create a community.
Mhm.
There's peer calls and there's mentor calls. So some of the things like soul retrieval, I teach in the program, not in the book, because
Right.
I need to be supervising people when they're doing very deep soul work like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But there's lots of spiritual practices in the book.
So many. I love that. Love that.
Yeah, and one of my
Yeah.
favorite ones is, putting out moon water. You
Yes.
put
Yep.
out a glass of water. I usually say like a mason jar with, a napkin over it and a rubber band around it so it doesn't fly off and the bugs don't get in. And you put the moon water out and let it get infused, and then you can drink it or put it in your bath or,
Mhm.
put it in your plants.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so the book has lots of spiritual practices. Again, very simple ones to more complicated ones.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so the book flew together really fast, and I'm almost done with my next book, which is The Secrets of the Golden Shadow:
Okay.
Ancestral Ways of Healing Trauma.
Oh, yes. So necessary.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
going deeper into it. And the Golden Shadow Method is, if people want to, it's a 2-year program. So I
Mhm.
teach the 3 pillars: Jung in the Shadow, Shaman in the Shadow, and Buddha in the Shadow online. They're each 3-month immersions.
Okay.
And it involves 6 live workshops with me.
Mhm.
And then independent home study and practice, which is,
Mhm.
of course, full of spiritual practices for your everyday well being. And then we take a month off in between, and then people can sign up for the next one. And when you have completed all 3 pillars, you're invited to the year 2 program, which is going to coincide with this book
Okay.
that I'm almost done with. I keep kind of adding more. I'm like, all right, I have to stop because I think I have a third book here.
Yeah. Yeah.
they're like
And
they're like babies, they
right.
kind of keep coming.
I get that. I get that. Well, yeah, a couple things I wanted to kind of say to all of that. One is we will link to everything. So the show notes will have a link to the book, to your work, to being able to sign up for the workshops if that's, if people are feeling compelled to check that out. So we'll have links to all of that. But I'm hearing a lot of parallel between your experience in this spiritual development and kind of my own, although I think some of the words we use are a little bit different. And for me, it actually started, I would say, a combination of running and yoga. So running brought me out of my house. I used to have a meme I would share before I was a runner that said, I'm outdoorsy and that I like to get drunk on patios. or I will read my book by an open window. And that was kind of my outdoorsiness. And then I started running and started being outside more often and really felt this deep connection. And it felt like something woke up inside of me, and coupled with yoga practice, which led me to meditation. And so then I started to get into Buddhism and trained as a meditation teacher, which led me to this interconnection between all living beings and the earth, which for me led to what I call more witchery, Wicca, witchcraft kind of. But a lot of what you're talking about with the shamanic healing is, right down to the moon waters. Exactly. I think it's just different vocabulary to say the same kind of things. Which leads me to my other question that I wanted to ask, or a point to maybe discuss. And I'm going to give a little bit of background for listeners, and you can fine tune what I'm about to share. But the idea of the shadow comes from Jung, and it's speaking to our darkness, the parts of ourselves that maybe we struggle with, that we feel ashamed of, that we consider the aspects of ourselves that we don't really like as much. And what I've taken from the book is that the conceptualization of the golden shadow is to counter that these things also do lend to us gifts and strengths and creativity, which in the language I use, I often relate back to this idea of meaning making. From Viktor Frankl and existentialism, but really thinking about, like, of all of the bad things we experience, there is often something beautiful and valuable and good that comes from it. And so would you say that that connection is accurate? Am I interpreting all of this correctly?
Well, yes and no, because actually what I point out in my book and what I researched about the shadow and how Jung actually meant the shadow to be defined is that the shadow is what's hidden. It's what's in the unconscious. And so the shadow is an archetype of the unconscious. And our society has started to focus on just the negative side of the shadow as opposed to the positive. And so I'm always an optimist, right? And I'm also on the cusp of Libra and Scorpio, right? And so it's about balance. And it's
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I'm going to assume that it's
It just
now.
was.
Okay.
It was just on Monday. Yeah.
Happy birthday.
I'm really feeling my Libra, the balance. And, Jung talked a lot about a positive shadow. And there's other books, there's another book called The Golden Shadow as well, by, William, I probably have it here. I'm so horrible with names.
That's okay, me
But
too.
But he was a Jungian analyst and wrote about, the positive parts of the shadow, which are very, self-actualizing and looking at how our creativity is unlimited, right? And we also have intuition and all of these parts of us that people are also afraid to look at. So people can be just as afraid to look at their golden shadow, their positive side. Like, sometimes people can't take a compliment or they can't say anything positive about themselves. And I was that kind of person where I was really great at hanging out in the dark and calling myself all kinds of names and not good enough, not worthy. And I just kind of pulled up a chair in the darkness and kind of sat there and got stuck. And, we call that the underworld. I teach on the underworld also, and how it's very important, not to get stuck there and pull up a chair. We're not meant to do that. So the part about the golden shadow, when I'm bringing in the totality of the shadow, it's the totality of our unconscious. And our unconscious is what? It's, our spirit, our soul, it's connected to everything. And so,
Right.
it's like the news only talks about bad news, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So the people now have been for decades talking about the shadow is only bad. And so
Mhm.
I'm here to say, no, there's good news in the world. There's
Mhm.
good people in the world, and you are basically good, and you have an amazing amount of creativity and powers to heal yourself. And there's so much beauty in the world, which is why I take pictures of flowers. We
Mhm.
need to start to balance ourselves out. Yes, we need to be mindful and aware of if you're someone who, has trauma and it's unresolved and you're getting triggered a lot and you're aggressive and you're angry and you're projecting a lot of things out onto people, we need to look at that. But we also can't just turn our back on how amazing we are. And
Mhm.
we have to really embrace that we are powerful and creative and here to create. We are creative beings. We're creative spiritual beings.
Mhm.
So we have to look at all of it. And the shadow is all of it. And
Mhm.
that's like one of the first things from when you open my book, it hits that right away that, Carl Jung said the shadow is the entire unconscious,
Mhm.
not just the negative. So people say, you know, they think what's dark is negative. Dark just means like
Yes.
you can't see it. It's in your blind spot,
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's just what's hidden from you.
Mhm.
And so you can be an amazing artist and not even know it.
Mhm.
You can have a lot of talents and totally disown them, from when you were younger.
Mhm.
When I work with people, I say, let's go back to, think about what you enjoyed to do, when you were like 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. There's a simplicity there too, a purity that I think we lose. It
We
gets
do.
conditioned out of us.
Yeah, we're conditioned to fall in line,
Mhm.
and then the fear, takes over, and we get a lot of messaging, about, who we should be and what we should do so that we have security,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And that's all fear-based,
Yeah. Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So, it's a spiritual practice every day could be to, just use your breath to learn to let go,
Mhm.
to really sink in and connect to your heart and your soul. Your heart
Mhm.
and soul are really one. What's in your heart is in your soul. And so, my work is really about helping people heal their soul, bring their soul back into their body, right? And then connect with it and let it start to show you, what you're really made of, what you're
Mhm.
really here to do, and how we can be much more than what we think. I mean, everything that I've done, I never, my dream was when I was like 15 years old, I knew I wanted to be a psychotherapist, and my dream was to have a small private practice, and that was it. The end. That
Right.
would have been perfect. But I actually, like you, I started studying yoga. I became a
Mhm.
yoga teacher. I'm a 200-hour vinyasa, certified yoga teacher, and that led into Buddhism and shamanism, and then it expand,
Right.
and so
And now you have a third book.
yeah, and now it's
Because it's
like,
just like it just keeps growing, right? There's just more and more and more.
and the Buddhist, term for that is egolessness, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so this truth of impermanence that the Buddha taught is that everything is always changing.
Mhm.
And so we're always changing. And so when you really embody spirituality, and first it's like you have to go away on a retreat to feel spiritual, and then you feel like you lose it, and then you go away again, and you feel like you got it, and then you feel like you lose it. And then there comes a point after time where you really start to embody it,
Mhm.
and um, so that really helped me drop this idea of who I thought I was, when I became embodied. And now I'm like, huh, I have no idea what's coming next year.
Right.
I'm perfectly okay with the mystery because my spiritual practices have aligned me, with the creator, with
Mhm.
this power that I know that wherever I'm led, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be
Mhm.
safe, and I know what's coming through me. I can trust what's coming through me because it's proven itself to me so many times now already that when I
Mhm.
listen to my intuition, amazing things happen.
For sure.
So we have
I've,
to surrender that
yeah.
ego, right?
Mhm.
And just trust in the truth of impermanence. People really don't like change.
No, no, I've discovered that over the years. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny when you mentioned the butterfly earlier, what popped into my head immediately was that not only to me does it represent change and growth and metamorphosis, but the ultimate surrender of just, I am going to allow myself to be destroyed to
Yep.
be able to emerge
Yeah.
differently, and that there's such a profound letting go in that, that when we can even get sort of close to that as humans, I think really amazing things can happen.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Actually, the butterfly was the first tattoo I ever got. I have three little ones, tiny little ones. And I had gone to Costa Rica and I came back and I really wanted a tattoo of a blue monarch.
Okay. Mhm.
And so I have it down on my ankle and I wanted it to be somewhere that I could see it all the time.
All of my tattoos except one are places that I can see them all the time. I actually have 10. But just to kind of connect with you a little bit, my very first one was a sunflower, and my
Oh,
third one was a butterfly.
wow. So this is why, when I saw you and that you were doing a podcast, I was like, yes,
Yeah,
I need
we're
to
aligned.
hang out with this woman.
For sure, for sure. So, just to kind of bring it back around to the pragmatic part, I want to make sure that I'm hitting on the things you said. You have said to folks listening that they can meditate, they can be out in nature, they can feel the sunshine on their face, they can look at flowers, they can cook food with their full soul and love present. Are there any other things off the top of your head that you could mention for folks that are looking for ways to tap into their spirituality as soon as they've listened to this episode? Anything else that you can add real quick? I think we've got a good list for folks, but if there's anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, I mean, I would anything that brings out beauty, right?
Mhm.
So decorating your home, bringing some plants, bringing nature into your home so that if
Mm.
you can't get out,
Especially this time
bringing
of year, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I mean, you can see my
I can
background. The
see you.
audience
It's
can't see
beautiful.
it,
Yeah.
but I have plants. My family is like, "Oh my God, Mom, another plant." So like bringing nature into your home is
Mhm.
actually these are spiritual beings as well. Everything has a
Mhm.
spirit. So the plants are going to shift the energy of your home. I
Mhm.
also, think it's really important for people to clear the space of their home,
Mm.
to keep it clean and try not to be cluttered because
Mhm.
everything is energy and a cluttered home is a cluttered mind, really. It's just a
For sure.
reflection. So it could be, to me, everything is basically spiritual. Cleaning up my closet can be spiritual. And I always leave a few hangers open for the universe as a message to bring me, to send me good energy.
Oh, see, I would leave them as a message for the universe to send me more cute dresses, but that's
You always
that's
want to
just
leave it.
me.
I know you always want to leave a couple of hangers empty because that means you're open to receive
Okay.
new energy,
I
right?
love that.
But to clear your space, keep your space as organized as you can and, bring in some beauty, pictures, paintings of nature or things that you love, things that again, like make you feel like you're at home
Mm,
because that's, again, spirit and ritual practices that bring us home to, who we are on a soul level, what
mhm,
makes us feel safe, what makes us feel, creative or just at peace. So I would say it's great to start with your house and bring in some things like I have a Buddhist statue.
mhm.
I have other, things in my house, lots of flowers, but it just depends on what you really like. And
Yeah,
some
yeah.
people are very archetypal, like, with Wicca, there's lots of images that can,
Mhm,
goddesses and, different things that can help you to connect with your spirituality.
mhm.
I also, really emphasize artwork doing the
Mhm.
artwork. And in my program, we do what's called a shadow collage
Mm.
of all different kinds of archetypes that come to you during the program. And then the collage gets put up on a wall so
Okay.
you can see it. So, as much as you can, to surround yourself with beauty and things that make you feel connected to the oneness of all things.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
are, we are one, right?
Yeah,
Everything is one. The
that's so
earth,
true.
the elements, all of us humans and beyond. Nothing is separate. That's just an illusion.
Mhm.
So yeah, so anything that can make you feel like you are connecting to your higher self and the oneness.
One of the ones that has emerged for me in the last couple of months, kind of by surprise, is actually burning incense.
Yeah,
I've discovered in the last couple of months I'm really drawn to scent as a grounding practice, and so in the evenings I usually burn a little bit of incense, and I have some in my office that I'll burn in between if I have a break in between clients. I usually don't burn it if I have clients coming in because I know not everybody likes it, but when I'm in my office by myself working, I'll often burn it.
yeah, that's
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
Palo Santo, sage,
Mhm.
incense,
Mhm.
and opening a window to just, you can, with your intention, just close your eyes and ask whatever energies, don't belong in your house to just fly out the window. Clear your space. We
Yes.
call it space clearing, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
clearing ourselves. And so that's a spiritual practice that some people do as well. Lighting a candle
Yes.
will
Mhm.
change like the whole, energy of the room too.
I
And that,
find that to be true. Yeah,
yeah.
that's beautiful. Did we
So
miss anything?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of ground
I
actually.
feel like we did. We did a good job.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of this wisdom. And I think that um, this is just going to benefit so many people who, I don't know, my perspective is that we are so deeply in need of coming home to ourselves because we are so fractured and fragmented and pulled in so many different directions, and the harm of some of our societal structures right now. And I just think that this is the kind of stuff that will change the world. So thank you
Mm.
for sharing all of your insights and your knowledge and your wisdom and your higher self and your soul with us. It's so deeply, deeply appreciated.
I agree with everything you just said. And I thank you so much. And I'm so happy that we're connected. And I'm really happy for anyone who's listening and just sending prayers for all of us. We're all going through a really tough time. And it's all good, but it's all yucky at the
That's
same
right.
time. And, healing oftentimes is very messy. And to just sit and breathe
Mhm.
and just learn to love yourself. Anything that feels, nurturing and loving, stay home and sleep more, just slow down can be one of the biggest spiritual practices that you can do for yourself right now. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for having me. And I just want to thank everyone else also for listening.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We will be back next week with another new episode. In the meantime, please send topic ideas, questions, or comments to Courtney@shineandsoar.com or complete the contact form on shineandsoar.com/podcast. If you are loving this content, please share it with your people because they might love it too. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're listening. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other.